Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms-related, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share this program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, or you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or Apple iTunes, make sure your friends know about us so that they can join in the conversation as it's happening. Now, also, please make it a point to go to fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It's a great place to go to buy Christmas gifts for the loved ones, for your friends, for your family that support the Second Amendment, because here's the cool thing about it. Not only will you be able to buy very, very cool stuff like T-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, but you can also know that every dollar that you spend is going right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment, and you can make sure that your loved ones look good while you're doing it. Anyway, that's fpcgear.com. Please visit it. I have to be honest. All right, and I know this is going to sound kind of egotistical, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I'm the type of person that believes in saying "I told you so," and not so much for the reason of I want to seem like I am so smart, but more because there are times when people just blatantly do not listen to good advice. And the reason for, in my opinion, I believe saying "I told you so" is simply so that hopefully the next time they'll actually take a moment to listen and consider the counsel that is being provided. So that's the reason why I do it. So I am here today to say "I told you so," or as FBC, we told you so. Since 2014, we have been advocating against red flag laws, or as they're known here in California, gun violence restraining orders. In other states, they're known as extreme risk protection orders. For those of you who do not know what these are, you must have been under a rock somewhere. I don't know how long you've been watching this program, but I don't know how you don't know what they are. But to give you the down and dirty of them, an individual can go to a judge, say that you are a danger to yourself or others, in an ex parte hearing, meaning you don't get to be there. You don't even know about this hearing. The judge then issues a gun violence restraining order. Law enforcement then serves that order and then seeks to restrain you from your weapons or take your firearms away. In some cases, you actually do get to go to court and get your, potentially get your gun rights back. But, tell folks, well, I'm not a danger to myself or others. You're guilty till proven innocent, but now you got to prove that you're not a danger to yourself or others. And, these laws are passed off as, but they're only going to be used against people who are mentally ill, even though mental health professionals have absolutely nothing to do with anything in this process. There's never a mental health professional anywhere involved in this process. They're not used as a part of the determination. You don't provide counseling. You're not provided any counseling or anything like that. If you are deemed to be a danger to yourself or others, absolutely nothing. There is no mental health professional at all in this entire thing. By the way, who are the only people who are actually qualified to do this? But it's something that is portrayed by many as, this is just such a nice, reasonable thing, and it's okay because, nothing bad could happen because it's so cool.
We fill out that affidavit, we petition the court, we get a temporary order, we go serve that temporary order. Part of that service is, hey, you have a court date in 14 days, right? So that the respondent gets their opportunity to go to court in front of a judge and give their side of it.
You're describing a very rational, reasonable process on a subject that really does not have a lot of rational, reasonable discourse these days.
I think the process that's in place right now, at least the one that we have here in Washington, so far it's worked out pretty well.
Okay, so let's just be clear. So what they're saying is it's a nice, calm, reasonable process. Well, there's only one problem here. And I mean, aside from there's more than one problem. Aside from the obvious constitutional issues, the fact that an individual has lost a fundamental right without due process. And when I say without due process, if you lose the right without due process, or before you do due process, then that's not due process. Before you get your day in court, if you get into court and now you're guilty until proven innocent, that's not due process. I'm sorry, but it's not. Both your property has been seized. And oh, by the way, I did tell you that they're going to search you. They're going to search your home. They're going to search any place where they believe you have a firearm. They're now going to legally be able to do that. Anyway, so with that, so they make it a point to say, well, hey, this is going to be calm. Well, one of the interesting things in this whole thing was, having a chance to talk with law enforcement. It's not as calm as what this guy says. In essence, what winds up happening is when they send people to confiscate the firearms, these are usually in most cases, it's individuals who are armed, who have there's usually more than one of them. There's multiples of them because once again, they've been told that this person is a danger to themselves or others, and they're armed. And we've been saying this is a concern for years. Law enforcement then is given a gun seizure warrant. So they've been given the information that an individual is armed and may harm themselves and is a danger to themselves or others. It creates an opportunity for very bad things and a very bad confrontation to happen. We believe that this is a dangerous idea, right? And we weren't the only ones. In fact, the ACLU even joined us in expressing their concern over this particular issue.
What this would allow is that a coworker of any of us could, by themselves, come into court and obtain an order from the court without notice to the restrained party, so they would have no opportunity to be heard at the hearing. And they could obtain an order that says that it is likely that the person is armed and dangerous. That order would then be given to law enforcement. Law enforcement would serve the order on the person, and we can imagine the fashion in which, it might not be a casual encounter if that's the information law enforcement has been given.
Exactly. So, in other words, even the ACLU understands that when you give law enforcement information, you need to consider the context that, once again, this person is a danger to themselves or others, so much so that they ought not be able to own or possess a firearm. And oh, by the way, we want you to go take their guns. That is a recipe for disaster. At least, and by the way, when I say I told you so, I'm talking about an incident that occurred in Maryland where that exact same scenario played out to disastrous results.
An Anne Arundel County man is dead after officers say he refused to give up his gun to police.
Officers shot and killed him at his home this morning where they were attempting to enforce the new red flag law.
WJC is live near the scene in Ferndale. Kimberly Eaton is updating this developing situation. Kimberly.
And Vic, police just left this Ferndale neighborhood now nearly 12 hours after officers first showed up here to attempt to remove guns from a home and ended up shooting and killing the gun owner. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the rain in this Ferndale neighborhood Monday afternoon. Police now guarding the street where their attempt to enforce the new red flag law turned fatal hours earlier. Around 5:15 in the morning, Anne Arundel County police say they came to a home on Linwood Avenue near Broadview Boulevard to take weapons from 60-year-old Gary Willis. They say two officers knocked on the door and Willis answered, armed with a handgun. Sergeant Jacqueline Davis says at first he put the gun down and stepped outside to talk with police.
He was fine with the officers until they told him, hey, we're serving you with this order, and this order orders us from the court to take your guns.
At that point, she says Willis went for his gun. One of the officers tried to grab it out of his hand, and Willis pulled the trigger. That bullet didn't hit anyone, but it prompted the other officer to open fire, shooting and killing the gun owner. It's a deadly beginning to a law that's barely a month old and that Anne Arundel County Police have only had to enforce 9 times so far, following court orders to remove guns from owners who reportedly may be a danger to themselves or others.
These are particularly dangerous because not only do we know there's weapons involved, we're also taking the weapons.
In this case, it led to gunfire before dawn on this otherwise quiet street.
All right. So one of the things that I noticed in that particular piece is where they talk about the individual may be a danger to themselves or others. May be a danger to themselves or others. Maybe. In other words, once again, nothing has been established. This individual has broken absolutely no laws. And it was amazing to me the cavalierness of the law enforcement officer in that the piece that was before for the guy from Washington, Seattle. He was just like, well, yeah, no, we tell them, hey, well, we're here to take your guns, and oh, by the way, you'll have your day. You have a day in court in 14 days. But in the end, the individual, and by the way, as far as we know right now, all this guy was guilty of, all he was guilty of, was not being willing to give up his constitutional right. That's it. All this individual is guilty of is not being willing to give up his right, and as a result, was shot dead by law enforcement. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't blame the cops. I don't blame them. They are doing their job. They were given the order to go and remove the firearms. That's what they were told to do. That's their job. And in the midst of their jobs, they have to protect themselves. So I don't blame the cops in this case. The people who I do blame are the politicians who put them in this situation, who put them in position where their lives were potentially in jeopardy, and at the same time put this man's life in jeopardy for doing nothing more than believing that he had a right to keep and bear arms. Now, I know that sounds good. I know the people out there are like, well, but he went for his gun and he tried to kill officers. Well, I'm just gonna put this back on you now. I want you to think about this for a minute. Now, I read the comments in our threads. I do, on Facebook, on YouTube. I read the comments, and I have more than once read where people have said, well, they're not going to take my guns. Now, mind you, this guy did nothing more than act on that very same sentiment, and he is now dead. We said that this was a potential, that this could potentially happen, and now it has. In less than a month, the law has been in place in the state of in this case Maryland. It's not even a month old, and someone is already dead. In the state of Maryland, they've issued these. They've basically issued hundreds of these. Hundreds. In this particular county, it was only 9, but they've done over 100. In Florida, they did over 450 in 4 months. Think about it. Over 100 of them in a month. And by the way, in the state of California, they're pleading for them to do more of them. What do you think is going to happen? If you have an individual who fundamentally believes in the right to keep and bear arms and is not willing to allow law enforcement to unconstitutionally disarm him, you could have, once again, no one who's they weren't a danger to themselves or others until you started to try and take away their right. Then all of a sudden they became a danger to themselves or others. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And by the way, if they actually are a danger to themselves or others, do you really think sending an armed task force to confiscate the firearms is going to de-escalate anything? Obviously not. Didn't in this case. And guess what? There will be other cases where it will not be the case. And in this particular case, it was the gun owner who was killed by law enforcement. Sadly, in the future, it would not be unheard of to have law enforcement killed by a potential gun owner. I don't want to see that happen. Nobody wants to see that happen. But that is the position that these policymakers have put them in. They have put law enforcement in this position. They have put gun owners in this position. All because, well, they want to feel safe. I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. And if something is not done to rein in these gun confiscation programs, you're going to see more of this. You're going to see a lot more of this if something is not done. If these things aren't reined in, if you start allowing the federal government to pass laws supporting these sorts of things, look, to all you policymakers out there who are considering these red flag laws, even you Republicans who are supporting it, look, just because it's popular doesn't mean it's right. You were put in office to lead, not to follow the polls. You were put in office to lead. Take a look at the policy. Take a look at the implementation. Take a look at the problems in which it's caused. Take a look at the fact that there is now a man dead who did absolutely nothing wrong except refuse to allow his constitutional right to keep and bear arms from being taken away from him by his government. That was it. And now he is dead. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for liking and sharing this program, telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.